So this is womensleadershipsuccess.com. And today I am thrilled to have with me Laura Raynak, who exemplifies the best characteristics of executives she's looking for: a head for science and a heart for people, the vision to recognize the big picture and to focus to track the details. She is one of those rare people who has an instinct to know when something will work out and when it won't. She's been serving the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles for over 18 years as an executive talent scout for companies in the life science industry. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you it's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. So I have so many questions for you. I'm so excited. We've never had a recruiter on the program before, so I'm really excited to talk to you. But I want to start with something. I was looking at your blog, which is great, by the way.
Thank you.
You said that the glass ceiling for women is many times like a sticky floor. What do you mean by that?
Well, I sometimes think that this sticky floor is, sometimes women feel like they have less control over their careers than they do. And they have less control over how they get promoted, more or less. And that's what we call the glass ceiling, like the things you can't control. The sticky floor is the things you can control. And those are the things like how you show up, how you, your executive presence, and then how you communicate and use the language of business to advance yourself. And then there's another small piece. It's around self-promotion, like getting really comfortable with self-promotion and in a way that you don't feel like you're being a phony or arrogant, but that you're being genuine and authentic. And I think those skills are limited. I don't think a lot of people learn them or feel that how important they are, but that's really a lot of what holds women back. And it starts with the belief. It starts with the belief that these things are available to them.
Beautiful. Well, I want to ask you more about that, but you also mentioned that you had a self-limiting story and you changed that. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate in my life. I was born and raised in a very lovely environment. I went to some of the best schools. I always had the best available to me, but I always felt a little bit like I was less than or not good enough for all of the things that were available to me. And so at some point you have to ask yourself, how is this getting in the way of where I want to go? And it was like a big mountain. And I look at some of the decision points in my career and my choices, and I always took the choice that was not as risky or not as putting myself out there until I decided to launch my own search firm. And that was when I really had to do it. But then I had some momentum and some confidence behind me to know that going out and experimenting on things that I could be successful, I could bet on myself and win. And that I just had to, it became a process of evolution to get over that, to go from I'm not good enough to, yeah, I am just as good, if not better than some people at this. And this is what I want to do.
So I think a lot of us have experienced that, and a lot of women feel that way. Is there something that you found helpful to do when that comes up, when you start feeling like you're not good enough?
Yeah, I have a couple of like visualization tools that I use, taking a bunch of deep breaths and getting very calm, and then, kind of picturing myself with the outcome I want. It's very like a performance oriented sort of meditation. Like this is how I would love to see things work out, and this is how it's going to feel. And then I kind of embody it. So I do that. And then more recently, I've tried this EFT tapping, and that seems to be breaking all kinds of new barriers for me, which is it's pretty interesting. It's kind of reprogramming your subconscious. It's pretty powerful. At first I was skeptical, but then I started working it a little, I tried a little experiment with it, which is, you always like, well, I don't know about this. Let me try it. And it's been working out well.
Well, I'm a TFT practitioner, which is like EFT. So I think it's a great tool to use, definitely. How did you get into the recruiting?
Well, it was completely by accident. I don't think I've ever met an executive recruiter who's decided when they were little that they wanted to be an executive recruiter when they grew up, right? So it was sort of an accidental career for me. And let me explain. I'd been very successful working in big pharma in commercialization, where we commercialized a lot of product, and I worked in a variety of with a variety of different customers, from individual doctors to hospital systems to the military to the HMO and the insurance organizations negotiating big contracts. And there was a point where I really felt like I wasn't a fit for the big company I was working for. And so I left them, went to work for another company that was in laboratory testing services. And we were acquired by a big company and then spun out. And in that process, I had a bunch of men tell me what I could and couldn't do. And I said, I don't think I can ever go back to working in a big corporation again. And I don't think I want to work. I just don't want to work in this kind of environment. And so I took some time off. I became a scuba instructor. I mean, I did some things that were really not career oriented at all, because I really felt like I had to flush my mind clean to start over. And then I started to experiment with different things. So I tried working for a recruitment advertising organization, an employer branding company. And while I did well there, I didn't feel like it was a great fit for me. And so then I tried advertising, just regular advertising, for a friend of mine had an agency, and I helped her. And that was okay, but not wonderful. And so one day I was watching a friend of mine, and he had this amazing life. And I thought, well, I wonder what he does. Well, it turns out he was an executive recruiter. He was a former human resources director for Pepsi and Atari. And then he had gone out and built a recruiting firm with his partner. And I thought, well, I want to do what he's doing. And so I got a call from somebody in the recruitment advertising business that I had gone to work for, employer branding business. And they said, hey, you got to talk to this guy over here, Richard Stearns. He does search research, basically human capital intelligence, profiling people in organizations, and sells it to competitors. This is before LinkedIn. So I went to work for him for a while, and I got an opportunity. I got a grant from the state to go back to school. So I went and got a certificate in human resource management. So I'm pulling the pieces together. Some things happened organically for me and just happenstancely, and I just applied myself. And the next thing I know, I got a call from one of my clients from the recruitment advertising company and said, hey, I need a head of finance. And somebody else called me 3 days later and said, hey, I need a head of engineering. Can you help me? And I thought, well, yeah, I think so. So I called my recruiter pals. I got a draft contract. I went to Kinko's. I had them make business cards for me overnight, got the contract in my hand. I went in and pitched the client and won it, and executed both projects within 6 weeks. And I looked at these checks and went, I don't think I'm going back to work for anyone else. It just was that organic for me.
How long have you been doing it now?
I've been off and on since 1997. So let me explain. From 1997 to 2007, I was recruited by organizations to come in and work their talent management staffing internally. So I did that for 10 years. And then in 2007, I went to go be a partner in a search firm. And so I've been a partner level recruiter since 2007.
So is a recruiter the same as a headhunter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a mysterious thing. I know I have people I'm coaching, and somebody will call them, they're working in companies,
Right.
But really talented people that are, they've lost their jobs, they say there's no way to reach a recruiter or a headhunter. Is that true? Is there some way to attract the attention of a recruiter?
Yeah, let me talk to you a little bit about how recruiters work with companies, and this will help you kind of go back. So a company will contract with the recruiter to help them, identify and entice and evaluate talent for a specific role. Most recruiters have anywhere from 4 to 20 openings on their desk at any time, but they're really laser focused, and their teams are laser focused on these roles. Okay. If you're not a fit for one of these roles, you're probably not going to be on the recruiter's radar, which initially. However, if you know someone who knows the recruiter and you can get a referral in, that is always very helpful. Also, too, sometimes people will reach out to me and say, hey, I'm in early stages of looking for a new role. Do you think you could help me? And if I have room on my calendar, I will schedule, 20 to 30 minutes with someone to talk to them about what it is they feel like they want to do, what their strengths are, and sort of which one of my clients over, the last 16, 17 years would be a great fit for them. So I am helpful, but it has to be sort of like, you have to be relevant in a way.
But how do you find a recruiter?
Well,
it doesn't seem like there's a site on LinkedIn or someplace that says recruiter. How does one locate one?
It's an interesting question. So, it's sort of like the private equity companies, right? They're looking for companies to acquire, and they're like, where are the companies, right? And the companies are like, where are the private equity, right? I feel like, true. I have an enormous network. I have nearly 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, and probably a bunch more that I'm not connected to. I think I would just Google, C-suite recruiter in your industry and see who comes up, and try there, or do a search on LinkedIn for a C-suite recruiter in your industry and see who comes up, and then reach out to them through that. And the best way to do it always is never cold. It's always to say, oh, we're connected through this person. Right. Yeah.
Connections definitely make a difference.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a job open.
Yeah.
C-suite job. How do you pick a top candidate? And I want to know that, but I'm also curious because what I notice is a lot of companies don't seem to be very good at picking the right people.
Yeah.
And it seems like recruiters are better at doing that than companies are. Is that true? And
yeah.
What's the trick here? What is it that you do that makes the difference?
Well, first of all, 40% of C-suite hires don't make it past their first year. So there's a statistic for you.
Wow.
And it's a big number, right? And companies,
number.
Yeah, and companies get it wrong for a variety of reasons. And let me explain how my experience with it, and I can explain what I do to beat the odds there. Okay. Recruiters have an advantage because we've literally interviewed thousands of people, thousands. And the secret advantage that a recruiter has that the organizations, there's two things we have that the organizations don't. One is objectivity. We can see things that they can't see internally. And so we will know if a candidate's a great fit for their culture and technically for them. So those are two pieces that are important for that success rate to go up to nearly 90, to get to the 90% retention rate. So there's that.
Laura, are you saying that when somebody hires through a recruiter, they're getting a 90% retention rate?
Well, it works when you work with me. Not all
Oh,
recruiters are created equal, but yeah, my success rate is like 97%,
97% for what period of time?
5-year period of time.
5-year period. Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It's pretty good. Yeah, not many people can say that, but the point is I really feel that because the recruiter can help the client figure out sort of where they want to go with the business by making this hire, helping them craft a position description that's very descriptive to that, measuring the candidates against what they're trying to hire for, and then making sure the fit is also appropriate. That that's also, those are the things that they need to do. And most companies, a lot of times their first initial hire, their first instinct is to, who do we know that could fill this role? And they reach out to those people. And sometimes they don't vet them and put them through an entire process before the hire is made.
That makes sense. So what are the top factors you're looking for in the initial interview?
Yeah, so when I interview leadership candidates, there's two things I look for. One is the first thing I look for is their leadership capability and the quality of the leadership they have. And how I look at that is, several ways, but mostly, can they create followership? And are they strategic thinkers? And are they using the language of business in a way that communicates their strengths? And then I also think they know what they bring. I think they have an assuredness about themselves of what they're going to be their impact in the organization is going to be.
Yeah. Beautiful. What are the top talents or strengths that companies want in leaders, in top leaders?
I think they want someone who can help them craft a strategy that they can execute on to get to their goals. I think these leadership roles, depending on even if it's a specialty leadership role, like a chief medical officer, that person's going to have to set a strategy for that department that integrates into the corporate strategy. So it's really about, strategic thinking and then the execution. And then on the execution, they want to know that they can build a team and create followership and get people excited about executing these things for the organization. And then they also want someone who will embody the values that they've built in this organization and collaborate across the leadership spectrum, the leadership team spectrum.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Are there any clues that you get that the person is not top caliber?
No, man. It's a difficult question for me to answer because at this point in my career, it's all intuitive for me. Like, I'm like, oh, I get it.
Things I know, because I'm doing
right?
interviewing of people that want to coach with me. And if the person's late showing up, that's one clue.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other, for me, I really investigate sort of the person. I think a lot of top level executives are very good at being political and also presenting very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's hard to understand exactly what their impact is going to be or exactly what their strengths are. And the only way I can do that is through reference checking. So it may very well be for me that I pick up the phone and say, oh, I see you worked with so-and-so at this company. What did you like about them? What did you think their strengths were? And when I have, that person tell me what their strengths were and I align it with the candidate's strengths, that means the candidate has a really solid awareness of what they're capable of. If there's a mismatch, then I have to have a conversation with the candidate, right? Of course. But really having sort of a different view of a candidate. And then I also think some leadership candidates manage up well, but don't lead their teams very well. And that's another thing that we have to be we're really cognizant of when we go to hire a senior level executive.
Beautiful. Do you think it's worth it to hire someone to do your resume professionally?
Okay, I have mixed reviews on this. I
Okay.
have seen some professional resumes done really well, and some that are like a billboard, a kind of, yeah. And so,
How do you
look,
pick it if you're, you've been on in a job for 15 years and all of a sudden you're out of a job and you have to get a resume done?
I think yes, I think it's important to get some help if you're that person. And in fact, I think people who really haven't ever looked for a job, who've been recruited by people who they've worked with before and done really well, they are at a complete disadvantage when it comes to being out of, like, oh, I just got laid off, or oh, my company was acquired and now what do I do, right? And they haven't written a resume in 20 years. I think it's important to get some help with that, but it's always the same. I think the resume is it's like the key to the door. Okay. It's a marketing piece that gets you in, but it doesn't completely sell you. And the things you need to identify in your resume are like your biggest accomplishments and what that impact it made on the business, because you're getting hired to solve somebody's problem. And they want to know the kind of problems that you're adept at solving. And I think when you outline it that way on your resume, it makes it a lot easier for everyone.
That's such great advice. And so many resumes I've looked at, people are just kind of historically talking about what they did, and they don't really say what problems they've solved. That's great.
And one of my big pet peeves is they'll put the name of an organization and their title, but I had no idea what that organization did, the size of the organization. And then I have to, if I don't know the organization, then I have to go look. So make it easy for people to understand sort of your sweet spot. Like maybe you work in $50 to $100 million organization, or you work in $1 billion organization. They need to understand sort of where you are on that spectrum, so they can decide, pretty quickly whether you're a fit or not for them, or do they want to have a conversation.
And how about how many number of pages?
Oh, I think, yeah. So it depends on the role. If you're a CEO or a CFO or even a head of commercial, you can have a 2-page resume. But if you're a scientist, a chief science officer, or a chief clinical officer, or a chief medical officer, you're going to have all your abstracts, and it's going to be 20 pages because you're going to have all your publications and all of those things. So it really depends on who you are.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. What about getting coached for the interview?
Especially if you're out of practice, yes. I think most C-suite executives are adept at building relationships and meeting people and all of that. And so I think if you approach the interview as hey, I'm just going to meet and greet, see what they say, I know what they say about the role on paper, but let's see what they say about the role in person. And then I get an opportunity to showcase my strengths in front of them. And you kind of look through that and then have like 3 or 4 questions you want to ask. I think that can prepare you. But if you feel like you're out of practice and you really need some help and it makes you uncomfortable to think about those things, then absolutely yes.
Makes sense. So here's a question I know that is dear to your heart. I want to know, a high-performing diversity candidate, if they want to know, how can they get taken seriously and not get passed over? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah. I've seen less dismissal in the last 4 years than I had previously. We've also been in a pretty interesting job market. Things are shifting.
Mm-hmm.
I really think there's 2 things you need to do. And this is what I advise. I advise people. Know your value, like know what you're bringing and know the impact to the business that you're bringing, and be able to speak to that at any time. It's kind of like your elevator pitch, right? In your head. Somebody says, oh, what do you do? Well, I help organizations increase their sales 20% year over year. Oh, really? How do you do that? So start sort of that and get really comfortable with self-promotion, right? I think culturally it's difficult for women and minorities to self-promote, but I feel like if you don't, then people don't know what you're capable of.
What suggestions do you have to learn how to do that? Because I think you're right. Most of us were taught as females to be quiet and not brag. That's what I hear a lot is I don't want to brag. So what's different about self-promotion?
I don't think it's bragging. I think it's really sharing your capabilities. Because I don't think there's a man alive who's shy about telling you what he can do. Right? Right. Well, there are some minority men that have, are some Asian men I know that, want to stay in the humble bucket. But in the business climate, you have to remember you're in a business climate. It's different. And people need to, it's like you're marketing yourself to these people on a consistent basis. And so you not only do you have to say, hey, here's the things I've done, but here, you can talk to these people about me, or here's some, here's my results from these things I've done.
So maybe,
and I also,
more comfortable doing it.
It's really like any habit. Like it's really uncomfortable at first to do new things, but it gets easier over time. But this one's a bigger hurdle. I think because it's subconsciously and in our hearts, we ask ourselves, are we really that good? Right. So it's the thing I've had to overcome, right? And do it in a way where I don't feel like I'm running someone over when I talk about it, or that it's rude. I really want to be respectful of other people. And so I just want to say, oh, interesting. I've done something similar to that. Let me share with you what happened. And then build a story. Like everybody wants a story. People love stories. So I think having a story around your capabilities will help you get really comfortable with it.
What a great idea. So we're just about out of time. Is there anything else that you want to share with us that we haven't covered?
I think I don't think that we're afraid so much of what we can't do. I think we're more afraid of how powerful we really are. And once we start to embrace and get through that part of our self with career, I think it gets better. And I think we also put over importance, this career decision is going to make or break me. Actually, no, you can make another decision. And getting comfortable with making decisions quickly and then making another decision if that decision doesn't work out, just kind of getting comfortable with sort of that will be very helpful to you in your career long term. And then don't be afraid. If you're working with a recruiter or even an internal recruiter, don't be afraid to ask the really hard questions like, so what's it really like to work here? And what are the biggest challenges to the business? And what are the biggest challenges for this team? So I'll give a, for instance, on this, I picked up a project a month ago that I've been working on. And as I presented a couple of candidates, the candidates came back to me and they said, hey, there's something wrong with the team. And I'm like, oh, well, the CEO didn't tell me there was something wrong with the team. And what's wrong with the team is the person who was previously in the role beat them up. And so now they're wounded. And so now I need the type of person I need for this isn't necessarily a driver, even though we have to drive for results. I need like a mother hen who can get people to the finish line. So it helped me understand sort of more culturally what the requirements are. So don't be afraid to ask the hard questions.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Laura, for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I would love to come back or call me. Anybody wants to get a hold of me, please feel free to reach out via email.